Hi, I'm Charles Patterson, otherwise known as CP to the YouTube world. I'm a stand-up comedian turned YouTuber, and my YouTube channel is called Wiliscredia.
Yeah, you're amazing, by the way, just so everybody knows.
No, I'm not, but thank you.
You're welcome. So what got you into doing YouTube? Like, what was the main reason you started?
So I've always loved movies. Uh, Not to get incredibly deep and dark, but I was doing stand-up comedy. That was something that I aspired to and was doing, and I was getting paid to do it. Um, I was touring the country. And usually, if you go to a comedy club and you paid to see somebody like Dane Cook, Louis C.K., Louis Black, I was the guy you saw before the guy you paid to see. So it was uh, a restrained success. I was getting paid to do what I wanted to do. Um, but then I had a personal event. My father committed suicide in the mid 2000s, and I just didn't feel funny anymore. Not to the point where I can go out and stand in front of a crowd and just entertain like
Yeah.
just something shut down in me personally. So I decided to redirect my ego, and I've always loved movies, so I figured, all right, this YouTube thing appears to be a decent enough platform where I can kind of control. Like if I'm nervous, I can turn the camera off. I can reset. I can go at my own pace. I can control what's happening. Not like at a comedy club where if I screw up, there's hundreds of people. It's live. It's on the cusp. Whereas on YouTube, it's edited material. I have full control. The only problem is, once it's out there, like there's pros and cons to doing something live and just throwing something out there to the ether for everybody to judge. And that is an audience itself. In a comedy club, or in any sort of live venue um, environment, you can get a feel for what's working and what's not. I'm assuming this goes for musicians and public speakers. Like if there's a negative reaction to what you're doing, you can make a shift on the spot and change what you're doing, which is something that back in the day when I was proficient at it, yeah, I could alter the material I was doing. Whereas videos, it's just out there for the world to see, and there's no live editing. If people don't like it, that's it. It's out there.
Um, Sometimes, like in our club, we do like public speaking and stuff, and we do have like quite a few shy people. And since you're used, like, we're used to being on stage and doing comedy and talking to people, do you have any advice to give to like those people who are scared of talking in front of people?
Well, it depends on. I mean, do you have an example of what people's fears are as far as public speaking? It really all depends.
Well, some of my
Is it just
friends,
shyness in general?
yeah, some of my friends are just scared to get up there and like say mess up or say something wrong or give somebody wrong information or just, just stuff like that.
Well, we're all human. Nobody's perfect. That's. I mean, it took me a while to like. You can't expect to go in front of a crowd of people, regardless of what you're doing. Um, there's a learning process. There's things that you kind of figure out on the job, so to speak, that you only get from experience. And depending on the platform, like comedy, it took me about a year to figure out um, that if, especially in comedy, actually, if I can beat you to making fun of me, there's nothing to worry about. Like if I know all of my faults going in, and somebody starts heckling and the night's not going right, it's a comedy club. It, if you're aware of yourself enough to turn it like it's very easy to turn mistakes in comedy because people are in that environment to laugh. So this advice is no good for somebody who's going to be doing public speaking to an audience, for something serious. But in my environment, in comedy, if I screw up, I can kind of lean into it and just say, oh, what an idiot. Why not say it this way? It's cheating. It really is cheating when it comes to comedy, because if you make fun of yourself and acknowledge the thing that everybody else is thinking anyway, they're more likely to laugh. And sure, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable, but if you can turn it into something where you have control over the mistake, then I always consider that, like. And again, this again comes from just doing it a lot. I always had this something I call simulated spontaneity, um, where after a certain amount of performances, I figured out that if I was having a bad night, I had this joke in my back pocket that I could always break out, that people would normally laugh at, no matter what the night I was having. If I was having a rough night, whatever, and it was a joke about funerals. And if the night was going rough, and if I had mistakes or whatever, I would ask the crowd if they've ever been to a funeral. And normally, I'm not asking for a response. I'm just asking to lead into what I have to say.
Yeah.
And I'll ask out there. I say, have any of you ever been to a funeral? And the punchline to that non-answerable question is, because you're at one right now. And then I lead into material that I already have about funerals, which I got that laugh there, which people think I was being spontaneous, but it's that's something from experience that I know. Okay, if I'm having a rough night, that here's something I can say that it seems like, oh, I'm having a rough night, and poof, I just thought of this. And there's a lot to public speaking that comes with re- repetition. You'll learn stuff, and like I said, it depends on the environment. If you want me to speak to a crowd of a couple hundred and not make them laugh and to be serious, I might have a more difficult time. Um, but everybody likes to laugh. I mean, unless you're talking about the 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 negatives of cancer and you try to crack a joke, then perhaps that's not going to go well. But I mean, if you make a mistake, you could always lean into it and get a soft chuckle just to ease the tension, regardless. Um, but as somebody who's developed a bit of since my life event, I've developed a bit of mild agoraphobia. So it's funny. I tell people that I perform in front of a crowd, and they're like, "But you don't like to leave the house." I'm like, "Yeah, that will." Um, you have to look at it as you're there to do something. You're gonna do it, and regardless of what the people say or do, you just gotta talk, and just prepare yourself for the worst. And if you prepare for the worst and do all right, um, all you have is smooth sailing. But again, it's not going to come overnight. Is the best advice I could say, is repetition, doing something in front of a crowd of 6 people, then 20. I wouldn't say jump into speaking in front of a crowd of a couple of hundred, but it's something that comes with the territory. Each person kind of will figure out what what their strengths and weaknesses are in speaking. But shyness shouldn't be shouldn't be something to overcome. I mean, that I think it's the second highest thing that people are afraid of, other than like death or heights, is public speaking. So if you're speaking in front of a group of people, you're doing something that I'll guarantee at least half of those people wouldn't have the balls to do. So just own it. Just it, it's again it's hard. It's easy for me to say nearly 22. I mean, You'll learn when you're writing too. I mean, uh, you'll learn when you're writing your scripts that, sure, things look good on paper, but when you have to speak them, they may not come out the same ways, like not putting a bunch of K and G words in front of one another, because then you kind of get this, at least I do, when I get a little nervous, I start speaking faster. So, putting a bunch of words that have similar sounds together, you might really trip up. And that's something, again, that just comes with doing it. The best advice I can give is do it and learn from what your strengths and weaknesses are.
Okay, thank you. Uh, we got we got another question. What
Okay.
what was the movie that like got you into loving movies?
Oh, um, see that I could answer that so many different ways. I can tell you the movie that I watched over and over again as a kid, which is Jason Lives. The movie that got me into like really wanting to study movies and and think of movies as more than entertainment was probably Man on the Moon, which stars Jim Carrey and it is directed by I think Jim Jarmusch directed that. I think I might have that wrong, but Man on the Moon starring Jim Carrey, which was one of the last films I watched before finally doing stand-up comedy. It's a movie about Andy Kaufman and the things that he did, and then it caused me to look into not only Andy Kaufman's life as a performer, but um, the aspects of filming and getting shots and really perfecting what it is about telling a story rather than because here's it's a movie about a comedian, but it's a story. It's a drama about somebody who's funny. So it really got me intrigued as to how how to tell a story rather than just tell jokes.
Yeah. Uh, a bunch of kids that don't understand why me and our media club people like movies so much. They think
Mhm.
we're weird and they think they're just movies and that we put too much into it, but we don't.
Well, no, that's. I mean, you can ask them what their favorite. That's silly. We all have hobbies. We all have things that we love. Somebody might be into makeup a little too much. Somebody might be into music a little too much. It's pop culture. It's silly to don't as a fellow movie nerd don't take that shit. There's something that we all go to for something. It's some sort of personal redemption. I mean,
Yeah.
movies. That I don't think I have to tell you as somebody who's studying. There's something fascinating about what a movie can do to brighten your day or anything. Why would we go back and watch the same thing that we know how it plays out, but why would you watch it again? And why do we have certain movies that we watch when we're sick and stuff like that? There's a certain power in movies, just like there is in music and other pop culture type stuff. So that's silly. Don't take stuff like that. Ask them what their most important thing on their phone is, and then the truth will come out.
Well, no. um, where did you learn how to, edit your videos? Because I know that you made like the 31 on 31 intro and the on top stream intro.
Mhm.
Where did you learn how to do that?
So I am a film school dropout. I had a proper introduction and education in film for 2.5 semesters. So I know the bare basics of storytelling, cinematography, editing, sound, stuff like that. You'd be surprised what Google and YouTube can do for you. Um, you'd be surprised what Google and YouTube can do for you. Um, you can like if you know specifically what you want to do, you can Google it. You could search it on YouTube, and there's people showing you how to do it. It's just getting the bare bones of how to work in um, the program or the app. But again, it's just this is what 12, 13 years of me doing it. So uh, I'll take the credit here. I know if I do have a strength on YouTube, it's my editing capability, and that's just from doing it a lot. It's from doing it a lot and knowing certain things about graphic design and what looks pretty and minimalist stuff. And educate yourself on why things exist, and then work from there. Like all right, so whenever like this is one of the first things you learn in film school, or intro to film. Uh, I always wondered why, when a movie opens and they'll show or you could even go to a sitcom. They open up with the outside of a house, and then there's a shot of the living room. I always wondered why do they always have like an exterior shot, which is known as an establishing shot. It's to tell the audience, okay, this is where this takes place. So it sounded silly to me, but it makes sense. I understand it, and so from there, okay. So if you're telling a story, if you're doing something, and it's some sort of material, uh, you know, edited or otherwise, and you're trying to establish something, you want to let them know with an image something, and that's a really bare bones example of how I got involved was figuring out why. All right, so this is a thing, but why? And then understanding, okay, that's why this is a thing. So it's learning rules. There's rules for everything, believe it or not, especially in stuff like filmmaking and entertainment. The rule of threes. There's the rule of threes is in everything. The rule of threes is a thing in cinema. It's a thing in comedy. Um, and it's if you take the time out to understand why a thing exists and why it's mathematically proven, you're more likely to just back into stuff. I mean, I can't tell you how many times as a comedian I've backed into jokes that aren't strong, but because of the rule of three, people are expecting something. I can go ba-da-da, ba-da-da, and you're expecting something on that third sentence, and it's like cheating. When you figure out some things that people are looking for, you can really lean into it. So it's just understanding why a thing exists, and then getting it into your head. All right, here's the structure. Here's a thing.
Thank you.
I hope that was a decent enough answer.
Yeah, that was. One of my friends, he told me to ask you, since like you are teaming up with Cody and Brian for like the 31 movies on 31,
Mm-hmm.
and
31 on 31.
that's a really
Mm-hmm.
unique idea. Like no one's ever done that before. So how do you come up with fresh, new, unique ideas, and how did you come up with that?
So 31 on 31 is the title is mine. The title is mine. The concept is Cody Leach's. Cody, last year, um, when Halloween 2018 came out, he said, "Why don't we do a ranking of all of the major slashers, the big three, so to speak, Freddy, Michael Myers, and Jason Voorhees, and we'll just have that be like a Halloween special." And we got to again, this Cody planted the seed, and I don't know how much credit should be given. 31 on 31 is my baby. I don't know how much of it was Cody or the group when it came to figuring out, oh, there's 31 movies and it's Halloween the 31st. So somewhere we figured out, okay, that's neat. That is a gimmick. That is a thing that you can market. Again, figuring out what people like and why things exist. There's just it just sounds good. 31 on 31, it sounds good. And you can kind of work from there. That we have, I mean, I guess I'll give you a little sneak peek. We have a thing that we're trying to figure out for other genres of films, and we're trying to think of catchy stuff, and we're just not there yet. I think we've been throwing around the idea of doing sci-fi stuff, and all right, so
That'd be cool.
how many franchises do we want to count, and can we get to a sexy number that we can? All right, so we have the principal idea. We're going to rank movies up against each other. That's the easy part. Like, that's movies ranked. That's the principal idea. Can we make it seem a little sexy? Can we do something that will draw attention from somebody who maybe wants a little bit, something that somebody would stumble across and not just think, oh, this is a ranking list. But like, I think we've tried to figure out like the sci-fi 40 or the sci-fi 30, because it rolls off the tongue a little bit. We haven't really stapled anything down permanently yet. But it's when you have other creative people, collaborations with him, it really gets me excited, because I know I'm doing stuff with somebody who's also got a very particular set of standards as far as production and quality control is concerned. I mean, there's people I can do stuff with and not really. I can just throw a thing together. Okay, let's rank the Child's Play movies, and like that's it. But when it comes to friends that you trust and have a bit of creativity to them, it well, at least in my case, it makes me strive, and it kind of makes me eager to be as classy and as put as much quality into it as possible. It's good to have friends, especially if you're in a creative process. It's good to have friends around that will tell you, no, that sucks.
Yeah.
You don't want yes men. That's what George Lucas had for the prequels. He didn't have anybody saying, no, you should cut this, you should do that, and
like Jar Jar.
Episode 1. Yeah. So, hearing somebody say, I don't think so, that you got to get past the ego, and it's hard. It's really hard. Again, this is 20 years of creating, talking. You got to get past the fact that this is my idea, I like it, and I'm putting it out there. Especially if you're collaborating, the group wants to succeed. It's not like they're saying you suck. The group wants to succeed. They're trying to succeed. And as a group, when you come together on something and everybody thinks, yeah, okay, this is good. Sure, your idea at first, you might think this thing is great. I have this thing about scrambled eggs. It's great. Your original idea you might think is like a 10, but if the group can come together and put something out there that is like a 7, you want that. You want everybody on the same page, and there's going to be times where you're either stepping down or stepping up into the idea, and that, I mean, again, ego plays into that. But if you're of the mindset that it's quality first, and you're with people you trust, creatively speaking, then you should be okay to hear no. It's not like people are trying. Again, if you trust these people in a creative outlet, there's no reason to think that them telling you no is to hold you down.
So, like, with that being said, did you guys have trouble deciding which movies to pick for, like, which
Oh,
franchises to
sure.
pick?
Yeah, yeah. So so this year was a lot harder because we have this outer shell. It's 31 on 31. It's now this October classic that we're doing, the group of us. And so what was a neat accident last year is now this precedent that we have 31 movies. We need to squeeze stuff in and get the math right. Um, and some stuff fell by the wayside because the group didn't think it would work. Um, the idea was ranking horror slashers, and we had stuff in the group like Hellraiser, and we came to a consensus. Yeah, that's a big number. The 8 films is nice to take a chunk off of that 31, but Hellraiser isn't really a slasher. Like again, it's rules. It's setting that standard. Okay, we're ranking slashers, and we have this number 31. Sure, it really is sexy for that number 31, but it doesn't fit the standard of slashers. So we had Child's Play on the back burner. That was something, it's a little doll running around slashing people. Um, Psycho was a series that, I mean, that first film, that shower scene
Was
basically
fantastic.
started the,
Yeah.
yeah, that scene started the what we know as the slasher subgenre. So that was an easy one. Brian brought that up, and we kind of, you know, winced, but because I know I hate the fourth Psycho. Um,
Yeah.
and then of course we all came to the conclusion that, all right, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, sure, it's not a knife, but it's a saw, it's a chainsaw, and it fits the slasher standard, and it certainly helps the numbers standard, as there's 8 of them, I think.
Well, with
That was that.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Uh,
No, it's fine.
with Hellraiser, I know the first two are technically slashers, but with the rest of them,
Hmm.
like I haven't seen the rest of them past 1 and 2 because I know they all suck. But wouldn't they be, you
Yeah,
know,
that was part of it too.
since people do get murdered in those movies, would it technically be considered a slasher even though Pinhead's not the one killing them? Because I know a lot of people die in those movies.
That, I mean, that's something that is certainly approachable. I mean, because Evil Dead is a series that we were like, the Army of Darkness is not. This is not a slasher. This is something that really doesn't fit. Uh, part of again part of deciding on our little set standards. Hellraiser, yeah, sure, technically it probably is a slasher, um, but there's some that I've heard are like take place in space, and um, you know we didn't venture into the idea too much because a lot of us, again, this, it's a democracy, and it was brought up, and people thought relatively quickly, like when we let it be known to the public that we were doing it again this year. A lot of people figured, okay, you guys are going to do Hellraiser this year, and it's just like, um, I don't, yeah, it's a big chunk of movies. It's 8. I understand that, but
People
um,
thought that because of how iconic Pinhead is. That's the only reason why people
right,
thought that.
right. I agree. I agree. And there's stuff that like we were already looking ahead to next year, and the idea of slashers is gonna kind of bend a bit. You're right. Hellraiser certainly could be considered. We had Final Destination, technically, for a minute, Final Destination was technically in this year's 31, but then we decided against it
That would
because
have been cool.
there's no. Yeah, well, we might still do it, but yeah, um, I, the, it's hard to define because we're running out. At some point, we're going to have to shift that whole slasher idea and shift to, horror or icon, because if we made it strictly about icons, obviously Hellraiser is one of them. People have brought up Leprechaun. Like I didn't realize Leprechaun was that iconic. Um, but there's stuff where you then shift from, okay, these aren't slashers, these are more iconic, but as far as the horror genre is concerned, people want to hear thoughts about that. And that's when you bend a little bit. You bend away from the slasher genre, and it's something that people want to see. Again, going back to the genre, and it's something that people want to see. Again, going back to the 31 on 31 title, it's a little bit sexier than
Yeah.
we're ranking movies. So it still fits the title. We're just bending on a different rule now.
Can I ask you something about 31 on 31 next year?
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on Wrong Turn? Because
Uh,
I love the
that
first.
was
I love the first two movies, and I
I
want to see what y'all think when you review it and then rank it. And those are definitely slashers. They're gory as crap.
yes, yeah. Um, you you so Wrong Turn was in this year's group for a while. I don't remember what we did. I think we shifted because um, Brian was having a hard time. Uh, we again the greater good of the group. Brian was having a hard time with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and he said, "Listen, if I have to watch 14 movies out of 31 that I just can't stand, I don't know if I'm going to be able to look at myself in the morning." And we shuffled. I think what we did was we took Wrong Turn out and put in Evil Dead and the Collector.
Yeah.
I think that's what we did. We had Wrong Turn in, and we took it out because it's 6 films, and put in Evil Dead and The Collector. So Wrong Turn, if it's not 2020, 2021, it'll be in 31 and 31 because we had it in.
Yeah.
We had it in right up until I think April. So it's going to be ranked. It's just Brian's going to have a hard time because I agree. I love the first one. I
Yeah.
really love the first one. The second one, I don't remember. That's part of the fun of this stuff is rewatching them and getting them fresh in your brain again.
It was the one that took place at the reality TV show in the woods.
Is that with Henry Rollins where they're driving a Jeep or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I vaguely remember that. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it.
Yeah.
I saw Wrong Turn 3 and didn't think too much of it. Then I think the fourth one came out relatively quickly after that, and I was like, oh no, they're lost.
The fourth
And I
one
never
is. Are you what? I'm sorry.
no.
I
The fourth one, go ahead.
The fourth one is one of those weird movies that takes place before 1, 2, and 3. So 4, 5, and 6 take place before 1, 2, and 3.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, that should be fun. Yeah. So 4, I don't remember.
4's even called Wrong Turn 4 The Beginning.
I'm trying to remember if I've seen it. I know either at or after part 4, I said, okay, they're going down a really weird hole here that I don't want to follow them. Like Leprechaun, I tapped out of. When he was in the hood in space, I just you're officially a joke. I don't want to watch these.
Like Jason X. I hate that movie.
Yep. So Wrong Turn, I don't think I know there's at least one, maybe two, maybe three that I just haven't seen. I
Yeah.
know I haven't seen the sixth one. I don't know if I've seen the fifth one.
Here's a
I
cool
might
thing.
have.
Here's a cool thing about part 5. You know how we were talking about Hellraiser?
Yeah,
Do you know who's in part 5?
I do not.
Doug Bradley.
Oh, really? That's neat.
Yeah. I thought it was really cool. That's the only reason why I watched it. It
That's
sucks.
good enough reason as any. Yeah, I bet. Uh, yeah, it's rough when you're putting a franchise into a ranking. And again, the sexy thing about Wrong Turn, there's no icons in Wrong Turn. It's just a large amount of movies. It's a franchise. It's not an iconic franchise. Um, the thing about Hellraiser is that's an icon. Again, the argument could be made for Leprechaun that he's an icon. You know, that's a movie that he carries. Somebody even brought up what's that series of movies that Kane Hodder did.
Uh,
He has the 62 ranked. So he has last year's and this year's ranked up against each other. So like there's intertwining rankings there, and we're thinking of the future and amending that because Halloween Kills. Which one is the next one?
Halloween Kills, October
Yeah,
next year.
Halloween Kills.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be out by then. So if we're thinking of doing, you know, whenever we get to 100, amending that list and squeezing in the stuff that would have been in the original 31s.
Okay.
So it's you know, again, it's a constantly evolving idea off a little thing, ranking, just ranking stuff, and
Now,
uh,
like you said with Army of Darkness, how that wasn't a slasher movie, I
mhm.
figured, like, with Cody being who he is, I'm a Cody Leach fan too, but I like you more. Don't tell him I said that, though. Uh,
Okay.
with Cody being who he is and loving the Jeepers Creepers movies, and since there's 3 of those, I
Mhm.
really thought he would have insisted Jeepers Creepers be a part of it.
That's another one. See, Brian is a so you have a bit of a sliding scale. Brian is more of what you would call a movie snob, and I mean that in the sweetest way possible. I'm not trying to belittle Brian at all. I'll say that to his face.
He doesn't like
It's not
Texas
an
Chainsaw
insult.
Massacre 2. I don't even know how that's possible.
Yeah, he has a more refined palate. Is the best way to put it. Cody likes some B movies more than I do, and somewhere in between them two is me. I'll be a little snooty at times, but at the same time, I'll side with Cody on some stuff when it comes to like just mainstreamy action stuff where Brian he needs a little bit more from it. So somewhere in between Cody and Brian's taste is me sliding back and forth. Um, Jeepers Creepers is another one that well, due to the director, Brian has issues
Yeah.
with, but we can again, it's another thing that if he's considered iconic, there's a point where we might turn it over to a vote and see what people have to say. And yeah, part of it is you got to remember that when movies suck,
Jeepers Creepers
um,
3.
and you're yeah, Jeepers Creepers 3 is terrible. Um, it's just like the same thing for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Some of those are bad. Some of the Chuckies are bad. It's one thing to watch a movie and just say this sucks, I'm turning it off. It's another thing when you're doing it 31 times and you're like it's a job, quote unquote, and you have to put yourself through it, and you have to see it through to the end. So um, the quality of the product kind of for our sanity's sake kind of plays into it. Where sure, Psycho was Brian's. Cody brought up Child's Play. Brian brought up Psycho. And I think my idea was Scream. And I don't like. I was kind of shocked that nobody thought of Scream. And then we worked from there. But we again working together. You got to kind of whatever the the high percentage, the outweighing factor of the group figures out, decides what you're doing. And then you're like, okay, so we did what, we took out Wrong Turn. We did the stuff Brian wants to do. Now, it doesn't mean we're not going to do it. We're just, we reapproach it next year. Next year we have 31 movies, and like I said, like you were talking about before, we're probably going to lean away from slashers and lean more towards icons.
Yeah. And
that's where Hellraiser, unfortunately, there's 8 of them. It helps with the numbers, but it certainly helps with the icon factor too. So, it's torturing yourself. People brought up stuff like Puppet Master, which I don't like any of those movies. I like the first one. Like is being generous. I can tolerate the first one. I've watched pieces of the other. What is it, like 8 or 9 or 10? There's a bunch of them.
I think there's 11.
Yeah. That helps for the number. So that's something that somebody brought up, and we all were kind of like, it's a big number. What do you think? So, as we get the things that we want to do out of the way first, then we just reapproach it in a year, and then again in a year. Like the quality gets slowly eaten away at, and then you got the bottom of the barrel at some point. It's all right. Let's do Puppet Master, Hellraiser, Leprechaun.
Yeah. Well,
and so on and so forth.
I'm going to say something controversial here, and it's like a topic me and my friends have been talking about at school, because they watch you too.
Okay.
They were wondering, like, how did you come up with the idea to introduce the Collector? Because some people think it's more torture porn than it is slasher, and what some of my friends brought up was the Saw movies. They're more torture porn than slasher, and if you entered the Collector, why couldn't you enter Saw? That's like what they were talking about with me.
Sure, Saw is not another question. That's another one. Again, Saw, oddly enough, like we've had this discussion. Saw is iconic, but the weird thing about Saw is, like, you know Jigsaw, but the weird thing that we associate, like when you think of Friday the 13th, you think of the Mask. When you think of Halloween, you think of the Mask. When you think of Nightmare on Elm Street, you think of the Claw. The thing about Saw, you don't think about the old dude that wants to play a game. You think about that weird white mask thing with the red squirrely cheeks thing, which is something that he's got a speaker playing his voice out of, which is so strange. That thing doesn't really do anything. It's just
it's creepy.
A vessel for his voice. Yeah, right. It's just imagery. But you're right. The Collector had a look, and it was a killer. It is a slasher.
Yeah.
Saw is a slasher. It probably is more torture porn than it is slasher, but Saw is in the argument. Saw is something you'll see Saw eventually in 31 and 31, whether it be this year, next year. It's come up. It's come up numerous times. It's again, you get into this. We've had this argument, just like you talked about with your friends. We've had the same thing where it's just like, all right, how technical do we want to be with this? Because most of the Evil Dead series is more ghost stories than it is slashers. It's psychedelic. It's just weird visions. And again, it just becomes a thing about preference. Saw is something we've talked about for a number of reasons. It's iconic. As odd as it is to say that, the thing that you think of as iconic in Saw isn't actually the guy who's doing any of the stuff. But and it's a big number. So those are two things that kind of put it in the high running for our consideration. And yes, it is a slasher. Whether or not the people are doing it to themselves because they're trapped, like that's the question. But um, the slight difference, and slight, like this is an argument that really, if you said CP, you're full of shit, I can kind of understand. Um, the difference between the collector and Saw is the collector is at least running around and being a part of the movie. Saw, for the most part, is like it's a pre-recorded
Well, yeah,
thing. He's not really being interactive with what's going on
yeah.
screen, where the collector's kind of running around and interacting with people. And sure, he sets up booby traps like Saw, but at least he's interactive, and it's not
Well,
something that he has pre-recorded, and it's not him or whatever. Yeah.
in the first three movies before Saul died, he was kind of interactive because remember in the first one, he was the body laying on the floor in the game
Yeah,
room.
he's just there on the ground the whole
Yeah.
night. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
kind of
So
being
I mean,
interactive.
sure, sure. Um, on a yes, on a literal sense, he's right there in the shot for the most of the movie. Um, but the collector is running around and
Yeah, he's
doing
fighting
some
people
other
and doing
stuff.
awesome
Sure, he
stuff.
sets up traps. Right, right. I mean, that's a very fine line. I could see both sides of the argument. I can. It was a thing that Cody wanted Brian to watch, and we needed six
Yeah.
because we took out Wrong Turn. We needed six, and Final Destination was considered for a bit, but that was five. So we took something that had four and something that had two, and Cody's like, "All right, this is my chance. I want Brian to watch The Collector anyway." So
So that's
that
how
was
you
more
came
of a
up with the collector idea, because Cody said that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Cody's a big fan of The Collector, and it just so happened that we needed. I think there was a point because we needed six films.
Mhm.
There's a certain point where you're building around something. We had our three bigs. We had Child's Play, Psycho, and Scream. Those were our each of our choices, each of our big contributions to the thing. From there, we were just working around it to fill 31. So at that point, we were interchangeable with what we were doing.
Yeah. Oh, that was cool
So
hearing about
you'll
that.
see Saw.
Yeah. That was
Don't tell anybody.
that's like that's my fanboy dream right there. Just hearing how you made that, because that's one of my favorite videos. Uh,
Well, who? Which?
the 31 on 31 videos. Those are like my favorite videos you guys have done. I love those videos.
Really?
Yeah. I watch
Thank you.
I,
Yeah, it's just
I watch those videos even when it's not Halloween. Like I watched the first one like 12 times last month before I watched the new one.
that's awesome. Appreciate that.
Um, this is something that my media club director wanted me to ask you personally. Do you we have a lot of kids wanting to make their own YouTube channels and grow and stuff. Could you give them some advice on how to start a YouTube channel?
Advice on how to start a YouTube channel. Well, just have some sort of vision of what you want. I mean, anybody, like I said before, if you know you want to do something, as somebody who's done it, do it. If you know you want to make YouTube videos, it's quite simple. The one thing I would say is make sure you have a camera. It, and what are you trying to do? If you just want to have a YouTube channel, I mean, everybody can have a YouTube channel. There should be a little bit of focus. And what are you trying to tell? Um, what do you want to do with that channel that makes you stick out? Anybody can have a YouTube channel, but do you want to do a YouTube channel just because you want to do a YouTube channel, or do you want to do a YouTube channel and entertain people and draw people in? They're very different answers, because again, if you want to do a YouTube channel, if you just want to put yourself out there, there's nothing holding any of that back. Vlogging, that's what vlogging is. People just talking about themselves. If you're speaking about film, if you're, you know, associating something off YouTube channel, just a bit of focus and foresight. All right, what do I want to do with this? What do I want to cover? What are my goals with what I'm doing? Do I want to just talk? Do I just want to vlog? Do I want to draw an audience in? Do I like having a little bit of a mission statement? This is what business call it. Knowing what you want to do going into it is the first step, and then the materials, I would say, are pretty important. If you're entertaining enough, people will watch you on a potato. It doesn't matter. But again, like I said before, cheating and knowing what people want and playing into strengths certainly helps too. I have sacrificed certain things in my life to get higher quality microphones and stuff, and lights and cameras and things like that. You know, I paid way too much for my computer when I first started using it. I wanted to overcompensate the quality of the product that's on screen. If I was boring, at least the stuff I was producing was good enough. But that shouldn't be the first thought. If you have something to say, and people want to hear it, they'll watch you on anything. That's easy. But again, it's just knowing what you want to do. Anybody can, like, the internet is really, it's wide open now. If you want to do something and speak to an audience around the world, there's the roads out there. The only thing I would say is have a little foresight, and that goes for everything. It goes back to what I said before. Know that once you put something out there, it's out for the world. You can't edit it once it's out there. I mean, sure, you can take it down, edit it, and re-upload it, but people, whatever the number is, people have seen the first product, and who knows what, they can download a video and send it to so and so, and then that it gets spread that way. You have to have the foresight that you're sending something out there for the world to see, and do you want that to be out there? Whether it be something you're talking about, something you're saying, something you're doing, having foresight in anything, whether it be, am I embarrassing myself? Am I saying, like, my thing is I try to avoid talking about things that I am not sure of. If I'm talking about a movie and I'm saying something, I've looked into it. I don't like, not knowing what I'm talking about, because it's just not professional. Going out there and talking and just, going off the cuff is one thing, but if you're covering a certain topic, you want to stick out, and authenticity and correctness should be, again, standards. It goes back to everything. Goes back to what I was talking about. Standards. Having a precedent set. What do you want to do, and what do you want to achieve? Again, if you just want to BS and vlog, there's nothing holding you back. If you do want to do something a bit more refined and a bit more focused, it takes a little bit of effort and figuring out what if you're doing it for an audience, if you're doing it for a specific motive, it's figuring out what. All right, so I'm putting this out there for other people to see. What do I want to do that makes me attractive to a potential viewer? And again, it's having foresight and knowing that what you think and what you love and things like that may not be what people want to hear, and it's tweaking. Being an entertainer, being a public speaker, being somebody who's got themselves out there, not always. I mean, very rarely is it somebody just going out there doing stuff they want to do, and not bending to an audience, especially if you're trying to maintain an audience. There is some bending, and just knowing what you want to say, knowing who you want to attract, and what your goal is the first thing I would say, is figuring out what do you want to do, and then once you have that, figuring out, okay, do I have the materials to get this message across? And then if you have that, go ahead. It really depends on who's asking. If it's off the cuff, you're ready. You can go now. If you have a bit more focus, if you have a bit more of a message, something that you're refined to speaking about, then there's a little bit of homework. I think when it comes to video production and stuff like that, there should be some effort, some structure, and some guidelines to what it is you're doing.
Okay, that was great. Thank you. I don't really have any more questions, but this is awesome.
Okay.
I'm a nerd for this guy. This guy's awesome. He's great. Promote the crap out of your channel. I don't care. Go tell people to subscribe.
Wiliscredia. It's youtube.com/c/WILI, or if you're searching for WILISCREDIA, and that's my Twitter, my Instagram, all that stuff is Wiliscredia. Or if you want my quick thoughts on movies, if you follow me on Letterboxd, I think it's WILI Reviews.
All right, well, thank you for doing this. This is cool.
Thanks for having me. I hope whoever watched this learned something.
Yeah, thank you. We're gonna put it up on our school YouTube channel, and then we're gonna show it to everybody in the media room. So that'd be cool.
Oh wow.
Yeah. That's why he said pick somebody we admire.
Yeah.
So thanks again.
Thank you. Happy to help.
One more question, but this is like a me question about 31 on 31. Would the Alien franchise be considered a slasher? Because I know it's like sci-fi horror, and the second one's like sci-fi action.
Yeah, that's more of an icon. The xenomorph is an icon.
Okay, so that's out.
And some will argue that it's more. So some will argue that it's sci-fi and not horror.
Yeah.
So if you remember what I was talking about before about our sci-fi 30 or sci-fi 40 or whatever we end up doing, that's one of the first ones we have. You'll see us rank Alien. I can tell you, in some way, shape, or form, Alien's coming up.
Okay. Well, I know you're a busy man, so I'll let you get off here, but thank you again.
Thank you.